Be advised, we understand some of the content of this presentation may be emotionally triggering in nature. Please listen as you feel comfortable.
Hi everyone. Today we welcome Angel Dague to our Tusc Against Trafficking podcast. Angel's going to share a little bit about her journey as a survivor of sex trafficking. So let's go ahead and start. Angel, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do now?
Yeah. My favorite part of my life, what I'm doing now. So I work for Rahab Ministries. I am the program coordinator at the Drop-In House in Akron, Ohio, which is located on Matthew Street, and I absolutely love what I do. I remember on April Fool's Day is when the Lord really touched my heart. I always knew him, but he touched my heart, and I just remember a fire ignited. It was just a spark to start, but I knew then I wanted to help women trapped where I used to be. And so along the journey, I met the founder of Rahab. Actually, she was sent to see two people in jail. And by God's grace and direction, I'm the one that ended up sitting in front of her between a glass. And so basically 11 months later, I basically told her, well, I'm going to stalk you here on earth all the way to heaven. And I want to work for Rahab. I knew that's what I wanted to do because they worked with the women that were trapped where I once was. And so I am there, and we do Bible studies, and we are family. It's always exciting for the women that's been coming for a long time, and the new family that's stepping through the door now. And we offer food, home cooked by amazing women that have been chosen by the hand of God to cook, so that we can eat homemade meals there at Rahab, and they can shop and get personals, and it's all free, and it's just basically revolving around loving the next person. Yeah.
And that's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the common themes that we've seen throughout these podcasts is what we as community members can do in being intentional in relationships with people. And that's basically what you just described. So that's great.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you some questions about your past, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
How did you first connect with your trafficker?
Basically, I was looking for a knight in shining armor. And so I had already been in abusive relationships, trying to hold on. I got mixed up with what love was, and kind of just fell into a deep, dark counterfeit love, believing that was love. So the guy that actually put me on the street basically told me he was going to take care of me. And I thought, oh, this is it. You know, I'd heard it a million times. I'm going to love you. I'm going to take care of you. And so when he said it this time, it was just that hope that this time it was really true what this person was saying. And, you know, so from there, abuse. And then, you know, he put me in my first car. But I was pretty untamable after that. Full-fledged on drugs. And
So he saw that vulnerability in you, and he took advantage of that.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
That need with hope.
Most definitely.
What kinds of things did your trafficker do to exert control over you? You mentioned drugs, and you mentioned telling you that he loved you and was going to take care of you. Yeah,
I think that was like really the beginning, actually. I was trying to hold on to that part. Most of it was force, physical abuse and mental abuse. Pretty much kept me beat down. I was pretty beat down at that point. So I had just teamed up with it. I was worthless and nobody and ugly and dumb. And the only thing I could have is this guy that was standing in front of me. But the deeper I got in drugs, the less I was being, the less he could control me. Yeah.
So at what point in your life did you know you wanted to make a change? You kind of touched on this when you talked about the Director Rahab showing up?
Yes. There was several times I felt in my heart that I really wanted to get out of jail and do something different. Even maybe walking the streets alone and, just in a very dark place where I felt that I might have had some clarity. But when I was in the Summit County Jail, I knew. I don't know how I knew, but I had a pressing feeling that the drugs and alcohol were the end. Of course, I was like, oh my God, I can't tell anybody this. I've been saying this for 23 years. But nobody's going to believe that I'm done with that. But I just kept listening to the voice of Christ, and I knew that there was something different out there for me. And I really heard for the first time. Now, I knew Jesus, but I really heard for the first time from an amazing young lady in there what actually happened at the cross. And from that point, I wanted something different. For the first time, I was experiencing a love deeper than even my mom. And my mom would have gave her life for me. And that point made me, I wanted to come out differently.
You just mentioned you were involved in trafficking for 23 years.
Well, I was involved in drug addiction.
Drug addiction,
yeah.
Okay.
And so later, when I was forced into my first car, I believe I was in my 30s. And, of course, there's, with that life, basically, I was raped, fell out. Can't really say I fell asleep. Up too many days and my body just fell out. Woke up in many of them houses, not really sure what happened or what they did to me. That's basically the darkness I lived in.
That's a long time to have that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then you had to have worked so hard to make a change.
Yes. The change I knew needed to be me bringing up the things that happened. I needed to bring them out of me. That was the hardest thing, especially when it came to the sex part of healing. I did not want to look at that part. It felt like broken glass coming back up through me. But I felt like the more that I would tell, the freer I felt. But it wasn't until 3 years ago that I really, Jesus brought me to my face in my living room. And I was pretty much I had pressed down the sex abuse and all that so deeply that I didn't realize that was the real thing that was hurting me. And so I was using sex as a weapon. I was angry and bitter, unforgiving. And I remember just screaming out to the Lord, please change my hard heart back into flesh. And that's when I began to look at the sexual abuse, and I started talking about it and bringing it out. God has put the most amazing women in my life for me to be able to really just talk about everything that happened, be an open book, to have no secrets whatsoever. And Becky Moreland is that amazing angel she put in, that God put in my life.
That's really an interesting story, and I'll tell you why. Because in one of the other podcasts, or maybe several of them, we've talked about the need to not be judgmental of people. And that's exactly the story you tell, is people accepting you for who you are, where you are, and then helping you move forward into a better place.
Amen. I agree.
So one of the things, because we are trying to use these podcasts to increase awareness around human trafficking, both labor and sex trafficking, and also to give the community some awareness about different things that each of us can do as community members. So my question for you is, what community supports did you find the most helpful along your journey?
Most definitely was the love that I was shown at Rahab. It made me I wanted to be there all the time. I loved how I walked in, and it didn't matter who I'd been. It didn't even matter who I was then, because it took a long time. You don't just wake up one day and everything's better. I mean, it took a long time. I slipped and slide all over the narrow path. I told God, okay, I'm not going to use, but I'm going to slip and slide all over this narrow path. And so I was still caught up in prostitution and all kinds of stuff because I didn't think I was worth more than that. I'd been told over and over and over for years that I was worthless. I was always going to be nothing but, you know, who knows? They called me all kind of names. And so I just felt, well, I'm not better than that. So I'm going to have to do this to be able to have money and this. But when I went to the people at Rahab, they told me all the things that Jesus said I was. That rocked my whole soul. That rocked my soul.
When I heard you talk in Wayne County, one of the things that you said was when somebody came to you at the jail cell and said, there's somebody here to see you, you were really excited because you thought, who would come see me? Can you tell that story?
Yeah, so I'm in the Summit County Jail, and I think I'd been in there around a week, and I was pretty foggy still. I'm coming off 23 years of using drugs and alcohol. And I heard my name over the intercom, and they said I had a clergy visit. So I asked the lady next to me, what is that? I'd never heard of that. And she said, oh, some lady wants to talk to you about Jesus. And I flew up the steps. I wanted to hear. And that's when I ended up in front of Becky and not knowing who she was for another 11 months. It took 11 months for me to find her again. But I got good skills. I learned them. And I used them to find her. And I remember we had a pretty long conversation that day. For, you know, I think they were half-hour visits. I can't really remember. But the only thing to this day I still remember was her looking at me and telling me that Jesus loved me. And I knew he did. I never thought he didn't, but I needed to hear it. And I just felt like that's who he had brought. You could just see the compassion for me in her eyes. She didn't know me. She does now.
Because you hunted her down.
That's right. I always say she retired from Rahab, but not from me.
That's fun. So life is really hard, and we know people get themselves in situations that really aren't easy.
That's right.
So what words of encouragement would you give to young people as they're trying to start on their journey and not get lured into such dangerous situations like you ended up with? So a lot of people over the years, tried to say the right things. But it wasn't until I began to believe who God says I was, that I started to build a personal relationship and really know who I was in Christ. I remember Becky one time, I was all, coming back up through all that mess to get past it, to start healing through it, was a lot. It was a lot because I started being hard on myself. Right.
I've been my worst critic, believe me. But I remember her just stooping down and being eye level with me. I was sitting in a chair and she looked me right in my face and she said, I could tell you you're beautiful until I'm blue in the face, but until you know it, it's not going to change anything. And that hit me.
Yeah, that is pretty powerful.
That hit me. And so I started saying who Christ said I was. I'd look in the mirror at myself, and it didn't matter what I felt I was. I told myself the truth of who I was. And that began to build a confidence in me, but also kept me humble. And like today I know who I am and whose I am. And because for years I walked with my face to the ground. So I would say that you need to say the truth to yourself. And that a feeling is just that. It's not the truth. And not to listen to what the world says, but listen to what Jesus says.
That's great advice, because I think sometimes we get caught up in the opinions of the people around us, which in some cases are pretty damaging.
Very.
So that's great advice, especially for young people, because young people seem to really thrive on other people's opinions.
Oh, yeah, I did for a long time, all the way up into my adult years, hoping, and whatever they said, that's who I thought I was.
I kind of developed this theory over the years. It wasn't always like this, but I've pretty much decided that I only value the opinions of people that I respect.
Yes.
Because the other people's opinions really shouldn't matter.
That's right.
And that's kind of what you're saying there. Yeah. What words of wisdom would you give adults on how to prevent or stand up against human trafficking in their community?
You need to be paying attention to what's going on. Mm-hmm. I know it's really hard to be involved in things, if you see something, it's hard to, but we need to stand out in faith, because our children and even adults are being drugged into a world that is dark and hopeless.
Right.
So you need to be educated on what to be looking for. Get as much education as you can. Know what to say. You got to be careful of the words that you use. You don't want to drive someone from you. I think our education's going to, go all the way until the time we're standing in front of the Lord.
Right.
So always be willing to hear. It's hard. It is very hard to listen. It's very hard to hear the things that you need to be paying attention for. But if you don't know the information, then you can't help. And then once you do know, you can't unknow. So I would say be educated. I think Rahab, and it's not because I work for them. It's because I think they give an amazing presentation on what it looks like, because a lot of people will think, the creepy man in the van.
Right.
And stuff like that does happen. But what mostly happens is what's called Romeo or finesse trafficking. And they're looking for broken children, broken women, broken, boys are also trafficked. They're looking for people that cannot look them in the face. Because those are the children and the people that need to hear who they are from others. And that's their victims. And then from there, it's horrible.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's been a big concern of ours, and probably what led us to creating these podcasts at this point in time is with the COVID crisis that we are sending our kids a different message about internet usage.
Yes.
And we know that a lot of these traffickers connect with these kids through the internet, and we're hoping that these podcasts will help bring that knowledge to the community about what to watch.
And be in all your kids' business.
That's funny. We just heard that with our podcast on internet safety.
Yes.
It's true. I believe that is absolutely true, that we have to do that kind of thing. And as much as it seems like, it's not that you don't trust your kids, it's that the perpetrators are so savvy and so smart that we have to team together to get with them.
There's a lot of times the kids think they're talking to somebody their age. And it's not the case. You can make yourself anyone.
Sure.
On that internet.
Yep.
Yeah.
So those are all the questions I really had for you at this point, and I feel like we haven't really covered everything that I would like you to share with us. Would you like to talk about your story a little bit more on your own?
Absolutely. So I started out in a family my family was love. I grew up in a place that my mom, she was involved in everything with us. Tap, baton, gymnastics, PTA, school mom, all those things. So I knew, I was loved in my family. My dad was raised in an abusive family. But I learned later on in life that you can only give what you have. And today my relationship with my dad is amazing. So, God restores relationships. But what happened is I'm living in Hartville, and, we have a pool in the backyard, and all the kids come for pool parties, birthday parties, all, every bonfires, we're doing everything together as a neighborhood. We were all family, and I find out just before I turned 13 that I'm moving to Arizona. My dad's been transferred through his trucking company. And here I grew up in a school. I never felt different. I think that's when I realized I had red hair, and I began to speak death all over my life, and I don't even know really how I got there. But I do believe wholeheartedly that the tongue holds the power between life and death. And I was so worried, what are these kids going to think? What's going to happen? So we get out there to Arizona, and I'm bullied. I'm being told that I'm ugly and this, I'm different. And I learned to really walk with my head to the ground and my hair in my face, because I thought, who should ever have to look at somebody as ugly as me? And so I got involved with a guy. They were people that also transferred down, and we ended up having to stay with them a few days while I don't know if it was paperwork or whatever was getting done, because we were transferring from a place we moved to when we first got there into more closer to the city in Flagstaff. And he came in one night and he wanted sex, and I said, absolutely not. And he said, well, then I'll find somebody that loves me. And that fear of him leaving grabbed a hold of me and made me do things against my own best thinking. And so I gave myself away. And pretty much I got thrown away after that. And from that point forward, somewhere in my head was I had to give myself away for someone to love me. And so I began to give myself away over and over and over again, and just got beat down through it. Way before I started working the streets, I remember being raped out in Arizona, and by someone that basically drilled in my head that it was my fault. It was somebody that I thought I could trust to take me home. And, that wasn't his plan after all. And so I think that really attached from that point forward that I deserved it. And from then on, I didn't care about myself through a lot of things that have happened.
So how old were you at that point?
I moved at 13, maybe. Wow. I am getting old. I don't know. Somewhere through my early teens. Yeah, I might even have been 18 at this point, maybe. I dropped out of school, and I later got a GED. I was 19 by then. Somewhere in between there. I was young. I moved back by the time I was 23. But anyway, from there, I pretty much was searching for someone to love me. I wanted someone to love me so much. So got involved. I think by the time I was smoking cigarettes and drinking beer at the age of 13. I mean, when I say smoking cigarettes, I turned all shades of green before I could even get it to go down. I'm thinking to myself as I get older, why would I do that? And then when I drank, I could hardly swallow it. I hated it so bad. But I wanted more to be out of my head. And this stuff made me fuzzy. And because of that, I didn't have to think about the things that I thought I was. I say all the time, I took all their lies and I shoved it deep inside of me and made it my truth. And alcohol and drugs took my thinking to a level of believing I was different than what I beat myself up with on a daily basis. So by the time I was 14 and 15, I think maybe 16, I was snorting cocaine. And my thinking was so distorted that my nose would bleed all the time. So I said, well, I should smoke crack. That might be better. So by the time I'm 17, that's what I'm doing. And all along, no matter where I go, I'm giving myself away. And it does something to you. And I was just explaining to somebody the other day, being raped does something inside of your body, does something to deep in your mind that feels like you can never heal from. But that's not the truth. You can heal, and I have. But I lived in a deep, dark place in my mind for a long time of the violations that happened to me. And I wanted to get back for all that had happened until the day I finally surrendered. And today I forgive. That let me off the hook. So just really pretty much going from one drug to the next, and then crack, it took me to a place of some serious darkness. I believe I I was on that for a year in Arizona, and then I didn't mess with that again for 10 years. But when I got back to Ohio, man, I came face to face with crack again, and it took me to a level here in darkness that I didn't know that even existed. But I got married to a guy going to prison because I was looking for love, and I thought, oh my gosh, if he wants to marry me, yeah, he had 18 years. So he really just needed somebody to be there. But one thing that I love about Arizona is I met some people that I can call family, people that loved me, a family that couldn't afford me and still allowed me to live there. So I had experience of what love really was, but I was after a deeper love, and that's the one that I got confused in. But by the time I moved back here, I thought, man, I'm finally away from them, pointing my finger, and got back out here to Ohio thinking it was everybody else's fault but mine. And I ended up in a place in Kent at some bar, and I think I realized then that I was the fool and that I was taking myself everywhere I went, and that's why things were happening. And from there it went deeper, more drinking, more drug use, until I came face to face with crack again, and it landed me on my back, and I couldn't get back up on my feet. And just abusive relationship after abusive relationship, and till the day that I met the guy that I thought was going to take care of me. And I thought this was it. This is, I finally have someone that's going to love me. And he beat me. He raped me too. And then he put me in my first car. And whew, I can think about them things today and be okay. I think thinking of the past, some things still sting. I don't know that sting will ever leave. And maybe it doesn't need to, so that I never forget. But though in and out of them cars, that was some dark ground. And the deeper I went, the less I cared about myself. I remember one night being on Broad Street in Akron, and I just yelled as loud as I could. It was the wee hours of the morning, and I said, God, kill me or save me. But don't let me live like this anymore. And then I was in a paddy wagon. I said, hold up, God. Hold up. I don't want to be saved like this. And then that began my in and out of the Summit County Jail. I ended up in prison. Prison was a horrible experience. I came out feeling less than I already felt getting there. Just the guards and the way they talked to you and belittled you. And, that's what I was used to. So when I got back out, I remember having a time in prison that I really did want to get better. And so I thought, man, I'm going to do it when I get out. And I just kept telling myself over and over that I was nobody. And so 3 weeks out of prison, I was back on the streets, back selling myself, back using drugs, back letting men pretty much just do their way. And it wasn't until I got arrested on March 31st. And I woke up in the Summit County Jail on April Fool's Day, and I said, God knows a fool when he sees a fool. And so thank God that he takes care of fools, right? And I woke up that morning, and I felt something. I didn't know at the time what it was, but I know today that was the presence of my Savior, Jesus Christ. That was him. And all this woman started talking, and I just started watching her. And the way she looked, the way she shined, the way she talked was opposite of me. And I said, whatever that is, I want it. She was in the Bible all the time. And that's when I learned about what really went down at the cross. And then I got transferred over to the Glenwood jail, back on the phone, prostituting, trying to get cigarettes, trying to get money, trying to do this, trying to do that, forgetting all the things that I asked God to save me from. And then I was sitting at this church service. I don't know if I've ever said this on a podcast or anything, but I'm sitting in this service at the Glenwood jail with this amazing lady that came in every week. And I had my arms crossed, and I said, who wants to go to heaven and just praise God all the time? I had an attitude that day. I wanted out. I had 390 days. I was so upset the judge wouldn't let me go. And this song came on, that I was forgiven because he was forsaken. And it did something inside of my heart that just gave me the thirst and the hunger to be less of me and more of him. And from that point forward, I messed up a lot because I couldn't get past the point of who the people said I was. But as 11 months later, I meet Becky Moreland. Actually, I stalked her until I found her. And I stayed on her heels. You're going to hang out with me. I need whatever you've got. I need it in my own life. And it was Jesus. And she loved me like the only other woman that had ever loved me like that was my mom. And
that's an amazing story. And I think, one of the things we do talk about is how people who are victims tend to just keep going back.
Yep.
And we really have a hard time understanding that sometimes. But
So do we to keep
but
going
there's
back.
that. But the other thing that you talk about is this hope that just keeps coming to you at different points and dragging you in a different direction.
Yes. And I mean God overall is the one that was really showing the power, showing the favor. I had went to Akron U many years ago, and I messed up a lot of money. And to the point where they made me sign a paper that if I messed up anymore, I was done. And of course I messed up. I was an addict, and I wasn't willing to be truthful. And 10 years went by, and there's a big, long story connected to it, but I end up hearing, I'm working at this place in Talmadge that ends up exploding. I should have been there that morning, but I felt something to come in later that day, and I made the paper, and I remember standing in the parking lot, and I heard God tell me that I was going back to Akron U. And told him, I don't think you know what you're saying. Those people said never come back. And, I ended up going back to a school that said I could never get another dime. And they gave me $30,000, and I graduated a straight A student. And what God showed me was that man didn't have the final answer, that he was the final answer. And he showed me that he built me for a purpose. And that purpose was to show other women who they are in Jesus Christ. And just be a part of loving on them right where they are. And I'm kind of the iron fist of Rahab. But I don't think there's a woman that comes through them that don't know how deeply I love them.
Just like Becky loved you.
That's
loves
right.
You.
That's right. That's right.
Now, do they hunt you down like you?
Some of them have, yeah. I had a girl tell me one time, I've been stalking. I stalk you. And I'm like, yeah, I know all about that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we want to really thank you for coming and sharing your story with
Thanks for
us. This has
having
just been an amazing discussion, and I'm honored to have sat here at this table with you and to hear all the wonderful things you've done and the relationship with God that you've fostered all this time to get you to the place where you are now.
Amen.
And I know that you will keep doing great things along the way. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you.
If you would like to contribute to anti-trafficking efforts in Tuscarawas County, you can send your donations to Compass at P.O. Box 481, New Philadelphia, Ohio 44663. Please be sure to indicate human trafficking in the memo line. We appreciate your partnership in this work. Together, we can make a difference.